You know, for a sport built on taking hits, boxing movies are oddly obsessed with the comeback. They love an underdog story, a hard earned victory, a standing ovation after 12 rounds of pain. Christie isn't that kind of movie. It's less about the glory and more about the grit, about a woman who fought her way into history and then had to fight all over again just to survive. Another movie review for you today. We'll be talking about the new Christie biopic starring Sydney Sweeney as legendary boxer Christy Martin, who was the first woman to ever box on pay-per-view and a pioneer who didn't set out to make history, but she did anyway. I'd call my overall reaction to this film generally favorable. First half of Christy plays like a fairly straightforward rise to fame arc. We see Christy in her early days back in West Virginia, rough around the edges, full of fire, and blessed with a punch that could drop a heavyweight. She doesn't plan on being a fighter, she just is one. Those opening sequences, the training montages are here of course, the early bouts all have energy, but the storytelling feels a little mechanical. It's that familiar biopic playbook problem. It tends to be checking boxes instead of digging deeper. The film tells you what happened, but doesn't always make you feel why it mattered. And with someone like Christy Martin, that emotional undercurrent should be the center of everything. But in the second half is where the movie really starts to find its footing. This is when the gloves really come off, both literally and metaphorically, as it dives into Christy's relationship with her longtime trainer and eventual husband, Jim Martin, like I said, played by Ben Foster. Their marriage becomes the centerpiece of the story, and it's not a pretty one. The film doesn't sugarcoat it either. The abuse, it's physical, emotional, psychological, it is brutal to watch, and yet that honesty is what gives this half of the movie its weight. Foster, as always, goes all in. He's terrifying here, not in a cartoonish way, but in an all-too-real way that will make your skin crawl. He turns Jim into a living, breathing cautionary tale about control and manipulation. It's some of the best work Foster's done in years, and it forces you to see the cost of Christie's success in a whole new light. Now, the reason the movie works at all, and the reason that it's worth watching straight up, is Sydney Sweeney. This is easily her most transformative role to date. From Euphoria to Reality to last year's Immaculate, she shows range all the time, but this is something else entirely. She is fully dialed in. The accent, the body language, the physicality of the boxing. There's quiet moments of fear and resilience. She feels like a real person, not a dramatized version of one. Sweeney brings that same mix of toughness and vulnerability that made Christy Martin such a complex figure. You believe her when she's throwing punches, but you really believe her when she's standing still, trying to hold her life together. And a quick shout out to a supporting character, Chad L. Coleman, who plays the infamous Don King. There was some comic relief there and a lot of swagger and levity, and the movie really needed it. I'll say this, if you're expecting a feel-good, triumphant, Rocky type of story, Christy is not that. It's a bruising story about perseverance, trauma, and survival, and it ends on a note that's more sobering than celebratory. The filmmaking is solid, if not especially inspired. It's competently shot and has a few sharp visual moments, especially in the ring. The soundtrack fits the era well, especially when we got to hear a lot of 80s and 90s music. But you do walk away wishing the film had taken a few more risks, emotionally, stylistically, and even structurally. Christy Martin's story deserves something bold. Still, I appreciate that it never turns her into a victim. It shows her as a survivor, someone who refused to quit, even when life kept throwing punches. And for that, the movie earns your respect, even when it doesn't quite earn your heart. A lot of people tune into this channel because of awards season, so in terms of Oscar potential, I'd say Sydney Sweeney is the only real thing that should be in the conversation here, but even that is a long shot. She's probably sitting just outside the top 5 in Best Actress, maybe somewhere around that 8 to 10 range on most prediction boards. In fact, in my predictions, I believe I debuted her at number 10 last month. The performance is worthy, no question about it, but the film around her isn't likely to build the kind of momentum or even box office energy that she would need to break through into that 5. I could easily see her picking up some love from the critic circles, or maybe even a Critics' Choice nomination, but definitely some regional groups will be mentioning her. Still, unless the film surprises late in the year with a grassroots campaign of some kind, she's probably going to remain in that just missed territory. As you guys know, when I do my final score, I give you the craft and the crux to equal what will be my overall final score. The craft is going to be all the techs and crafts that go into making the movie, cinematography, score, production design, costuming, etc. This was a little bland in terms of what they could have done, especially since it takes place over several different eras. We get to see bits and pieces from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and even into the 2010s a little bit. And it does a nice job of blending those various decades to kind of keep us up to date with what we're visually seeing. However, nothing really stands out where you go, wow, they really went out of their way to make that look like, 1987 or whatever. It just kind of is there. But it's not bad either. It's just average. So for The Craft, I'm going to give Christy a 6 out of 10. Like I said, it's not horrible, but it's nothing super exceptional either. Then when it comes to my crux score, that's really drilled down to the performances in the film and the overall vibes, or how it left with me. And I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10. Sydney Sweeney is really carrying the torch for that 7. We also get a very commendable and dedicated performance here from Ben Foster. Eerily just an ugly character, but he really bought into that and made me believe it. My overall final score on Christy is going to be a 6 out of 10. I do recommend seeing it, especially if you like these biopics that deal with fighters or wrestlers. It's a very nice entry into that overall subgenre. It just doesn't do anything really different or very exceptional. Have you guys seen Christy? Are you planning on seeing it? Please let me know that down below. The movie will be released nationwide on November 7th. It is currently playing in limited release if you want to check the listings in your city. Thanks for tuning into this movie review, guys. I will see you out here next time in the garage.